Susan Hallett has taught special education students throughout her career with the York Region District School Board and the Ministry of Education. Her experience as a CERT, Special Education Department Head, Special Education Consultant, and in her current role in Resource Services at the Trillium Demonstration School have provided many opportunities to support staff development, leadership, and collaboration in schools across Ontario. In dealing with issues and challenges that numerous students and staff face, a positive growth mindset has been the passion that has guided her career to impact change and strive to achieve continuous improvement in the level of service that we offer our students. Welcome, Susan. The cyber floor is now yours.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today. It's difficult at the end of the day. This will be useful and provide you with information that you can use as educators in the classroom. The premise behind growth mindset will be examined during this webinar. Growth mindset, putting positive thinking into practice. The purpose of today is to help you as educators develop processes that can boost your students' learning and growth mindset. Is it okay? Okay. With this in mind, the following learning outcomes will be the presentation. I'm going to examine growth mindset and its relevance to students with learning disabilities. I'm going to develop an awareness of the implications of growth mindset in your professional practice. I'm going to do some activities with you today and look at a student profile. We're going to explore resources for putting positive thinking into practice. And provide you with some further resources that you can use in your schools. First, I want to take a poll to get to know your background knowledge with growth mindset. So we're going to launch a poll now. I want to know how you would rate your knowledge of growth mindset. Okay, so many of you are somewhat knowledgeable and familiar with the concept of growth mindset. And I'm going to return to my presentation. Okay, let's look at these two words, fixed and growth mindset. I want you to look at these two words, fixed and growth. Before we start, I want you to think about the connotations of these two words. The word fixed, what do you think of? What adjectives do you think about? And how does this word relate to your students? Fixed means this is it. Nothing's going to change. This is what you're stuck with. When you think of growth, what do you think about? Think about this word in relationship to your students. Do you want their ideas to be fixed or open to growth? Growth means hope that it may get better. With this in mind, let's examine how we can encourage students with an LD to follow the path of growth mindset. Let's examine some statements and you decide if they're fixed or growth related. Intelligence is something you're born with. I want you to decide if this statement refers to a fixed or growth mindset. That's right. It's a fixed mindset. Next one. Practice and strategies impact learning. Is that a growth mindset or a fixed mindset term? That's right, growth mindset. Positive. Students can always improve with effort. The next one. The brain is like a muscle and physically changes with training. That's a growth mindset concept. These are some key points that we will review today. To sum up, it's really important to understand that students with a fixed mindset can be taught or shown how to change to a growth mindset. This is important if they're to be successful in their journey. Next, what is growth mindset? Growth mindset was first developed by Carol Dweck, who's a professor of psychology at Stanford University, who originally coined the term and has done extensive research in the area. She's a pioneer in the field. Carol Dweck's definition of growth mindset is the perception that basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. The definition of fixed mindset is sort of an antiquated belief that we're talented or intelligent if we're born with it. We know this is not true nowadays because research by Carol Dweck and others has shown us that the brain grows and physically changes with learning. Here are some key aspects of growth mindset and fixed mindset to help you understand the definitions further. So when we talk about intelligence, it's a growth. When we talk about intelligence in terms of growth mindset, it's something that can be developed. And intelligence under fixed mindset is something that people believe. If you have a fixed mindset, you believe that it's fixed and cannot change. It's something that you're born with. It's innate. When we look at brains and talent, if somebody has a growth mindset, it's really just a starting point or a springboard. And with a fixed mindset, it's believed that you're born with what you have, that your success is attributed because it's innate. When we look at effort, effort is viewed in terms of growth mindset as a process where we're always learning and we're continually growing. However, with fixed mindset, effort just doesn't make a difference. It doesn't matter how hard you try, you're never going to get better. That fixed mindset approach. So overall, growth mindset has the belief that you can always grow and learn. And with a fixed mindset, you either get it or you don't. Growth mindsets. Carol Dweck's research reveals that intelligence can be developed and expertise can be built by means of deliberate practice. Growth mindset's real purpose is helping students to develop processes that can boost their learning. When I think about growth mindset, I think about watering the brain. When it starts to wilt and not do well, we have to keep exploring ways to keep it living. We have to examine the roadblocks that we encounter that stop achievement and lead to a fixed mindset. There is research to show that this is what makes students with an LD be so successful in post-secondary school because they often experience failure along the way and they persevere and develop strategies to overcome roadblocks that they achieve. To conclude, it's really important to convey to our students that things can happen because you've taken the wrong path, but we can change that and have control over our growth and development. I'm going to launch a poll now. People are intelligent due to, and I'm going to provide you with some options here. It's a multiple choice question. So you can pick innate ability, help and support from others, learning from overcoming struggles and getting things wrong, or using consistent strategies that they know works. Okay, so the answer is C, learning from overcoming struggles and getting things wrong. This is a growth mindset premise. There's two key points I want to make here, and that's that feedback and opportunities lead to learning. And the brain can change with new learning and not just trying harder. Now I'm going to return to my presentation. So I want to frame growth mindset with being open to new ideas, and I'm going to have you look at it in the context of seeing what happens with the process of creating something new. So let's have some fun here. Growth mindset's evident in the approach that the two people in the next two examples take in their learning. I want you to pay attention to how people in both of the next two situations were not put off by understanding the outcomes. They provided solutions to the problems they encountered in their lives. So let's take a challenge. What would you do with a melting candy bar, chocolate bar, in your pocket? So we have engineer Percy Spencer discovered that every time he went near the radar vacuum tube in his lab, the candy bar in his pocket melted. So what would you do with a candy bar that melted? Engineer Percy Spencer, discovered that every time he went near a radar-related vacuum tube, that this melted, and he looked at what caused the problem and how he'd use it to make the situation better. He was curious, and instead of just throwing that chocolate bar out, he reframed his thinking to explore why the chocolate bar melted when he got too close to the radar vacuum tube. So with perseverance and a growth mindset, this led to a famous invention. We can use roadblocks as strategies to find solutions to other problems. Percy the scientist applied it to building a machine to melt chocolate when needed. Can anyone guess what this invention was? So this thinking is what led to the invention of the microwave. In the next challenge that I'm going to present to you, growth mindset is not limited to adults and research in a lab who invent complex machines. 13-year-old Mallory refused to say that she could not find a solution to the hiccups that she had for 2 years. And she did everything from sipping water out of a cup upside down and drinking salt water. She examined every solution possible. Finally, she decided, with her keep trying it attitude, she actually invented something called hiccup pops that mix sugar, vinegar, and apple cider, and it led to her startup company. And she's actually working with MBA students to produce her company. The point is, with these two examples, is that teaching growth mindset to children with an LD is necessary because they do encounter a lot of roadblocks along the way with their learning difficulties. Students with an LD need to realize that there's going to be academic roadblocks and that they can be overcome. Highlighting the setbacks can help students with an LD reframe and feel more secure about taking risks. It's important for teachers to encourage students through self-discovery and use examples like the challenges presented to Percy and Mallory so that students can go from a fixed to a growth mindset of failure and frustration to growth mindset. Like the two examples of Percy and Mallory, time and effort led to incredible discoveries like the microwave and the hiccup pops. So don't dismiss a problem and explore why it happens. This is a growth mindset approach, and this can be used in the classroom. I took these two examples from a website called Startup America, and they have some examples you can use in the classroom. They have a great story about potato chips and another really good story about Play-Doh that you can also use to show students that perseverance and that keep trying it attitude can lead to some really beneficial things. So we all start the year off right. Classroom teachers come in early, they decorate, they rearrange their learning environment, everybody's decorating the walls. It's a really key time of the year to set growth mindset goals with students and how this will happen over the rest of the year. We all begin with a positive growth mindset at the beginning of September with our students, and we put positive thinking into practice right from the beginning. September is usually a time when teachers begin developing IEPs and gathering information, goal setting, determining programming strategies. But the growth mindset journey is something that needs to be intentionally revisited throughout the school year with educators and students. And then we hit February, the end of term one, and report card time, evaluation, assessments, and it's time when students lose their natural drive to succeed, and some can even become underachievers. So it's time to get some feedback and make changes as part of the learning process to teach and involve the student into risk-taking to meet expectations. It's an opportunity, I think, in February to reset and return to that powerful September, beginning of the school year when everybody's in that growth mindset belief. And it's really difficult, but it has to be done and everybody can work together. Anyone can make a new path, but it is hard work. We need to convince our students and ourselves to take risks and come out of our comfort zone halfway through the year and not get into a rut. It's a really great time to sort of push that, what I call reset button. How do we reset? Well, we really have to look at the climate and the environment at that point in the school year in February. We have to show an interest in the students' lives. We have to reestablish that connection and really get them to look at, we have to look at our setting and the seating in the classroom, and is it the best place for the student? What are the physical cues that we're reinforcing? A smile, a high five? How are we giving positive reinforcement at that time of the year? And are we giving a lot of positive reinforcement? We also need to look at the input that we're giving to students. We need to be clear about what's expected and ensure that they're achieving to the best of their ability. One of the things that the research shows is that the strategies that we use there are those go-to strategies like ask, three, and then me. The more consistent those are, the students really get into a groove and a routine, and they really need that, but they may need to be changed. And so asking the students for some of their input, what they would like to see at that point, is really helpful because you're doing a little bit of changing. And asking students for support in designing rubrics really gets them on board and engaged. We also need to look at the output. And one of the things that they say in the research is that often in a classroom, we use work displays that are really putting up those good marks. And one of the things that can really help students, especially those with learning disabilities, is to show work that displays effort and perseverance. So something that took a long time, it may not be perfect in the end, but it really shows effort. And a gradual release of responsibility is really key halfway. And feedback, what does it like? There's a really interesting story about Carol Dweck. She does a TED Talk called The Power of Believing That You Can. And she talks about a Chicago study where the students received, they were high school students, they received an A or a B and then a not yet. So they didn't give them a failing mark, and the not yet influenced them to show that they were on a learning curve, and they held a future promise that they could do it and that they shouldn't give up. So those are just a few ideas about resetting halfway through the school year, and I'm going to provide you with a resource later on that's going to show you some other ideas that can be used to help keep up this positive growth mindset that we all start off with in September. I now want to show you this pathway that I created called the intentional pathway, because growth mindset is a journey. It needs to be intentionally revisited throughout the school year with educators and students. I call it the intentional pathway to positive growth mindset. It's not something that you implement just once. It's a really consistent approach throughout the school year to be reinforced with both effort and outcomes of your students and others. All outcomes become teachable moments, and this is the main premise. You learn to grow from each individual experience, whether it's good or bad. The role of the teacher throughout the year is implementing growth mindset. Success is really not guaranteed in every activity, but that we can learn from every activity, whether we're successful or not. And that is a really key foundational aspect that Carol Dweck focuses on, is we learn from everything, even if we don't get it perfect. It's the mistakes that we should value the most. And as professionals, we set goals for ourselves. We do daily, term goals, professional, personal goals. We have PD growth. It's really important to not stray away from the pathway and develop a fixed mindset as the school year progresses. When students and educators have a growth mindset, they understand that intelligence can be developed. And it's really important to hear that fixed mindset voice. If it creeps in partway through the school year, we need to hear from educators and students. I'm not sure if I can do it, that fixed mindset, to changing that to, I think we can do it, with strategies and accommodations. So it's really important to look at that through the school year and look at September and our journey all the way to June. When we look at June and we're doing reflection and evaluation. June is a meaningful time to look at our teaching and some of the barriers and mindsets that we've had in the classroom, and to reevaluate and to actually involve our students in the process. There was a learning and performance study in 2013, and it examined 1,518 students from grades 6 to 12 in a rural setting, and it looked at learning motivation and performance of students with and without learning disabilities. And the students with learning disabilities, when they hit roadblocks or experienced challenges, they believed in this study that they were less intelligent, and rather than explore what went wrong, they got shut down and believed that they couldn't do anything. And what the research shows is that students with a learning disability possess low self-efficacy, low motivation, low self-esteem. And they believe that intelligence is fixed, that no matter what they do, they cannot change their intelligence. So these barriers must be broken down. And as educators, our role is to support students with a mindset change, particularly those in our class with a learning disability. The results of this study concluded that interventions for students with a learning disability must target 3 things. So we learn far more from the roadblocks and failures in life than our successes. So if we help students to be self-regulated learners, it's really important that will change their mindset. And if we help them to become cognizant of their academic strengths and weaknesses, it will really increase their confidence. And I think we do this well in our IEPs, writing down students' strengths and weaknesses and including them in on the process. And the third thing that they found with this study was that we need to target a broader range of cognitive self-regulatory processes. So if students are cognizant of their academic strengths and weaknesses, such as knowing their reading level and defining the next steps for improvement, they can generalize and attribute improvement to their performance and not intelligence. And it's our role to guide them through displaying our own metacognition with theirs and giving them that self-talk. So these findings from this study lend support for Carol Dweck's growth mindset because it encourages taking control over and evaluating one's own learning and behavior. What is the relevance of growth mindset to students with learning disabilities? This is a reoccurring idea in the research, is the low self-esteem associated with having a learning disability and the significant impact it has on students with learning disabilities in terms of achievement. And so I provided a quote for you here. This may be especially important for children with learning disabilities. Often for them, it's not the sheer effort that works, but find the right strategy. So with this knowledge, using growth mindset as a means to improve self-esteem has proven to have a positive impact on achievement. Reframing the student's thinking from I can't to how can I is a challenge for teachers. And I will provide some strategies and resources later for dealing with this. Why is this important? It's important that educators foster the belief that frustration does not mean failure, but rather as an attempt to overcome the obstacle. Over time, frustration will signal perseverance rather than failure. And so growth mindset fosters the growth and ability over time. And Carol Dweck's research shows that students with a growth mindset outperform those with a fixed mindset. And Carol Dweck and her team of research have proven that this is closely linked to achievement. We have something in the research that Carol Dweck discusses, the two phases of viewing effort. Effort's a key factor in sustaining reoccurring achievement. When difficulties or roadblocks arise, mindset can lead someone down two different pathways. Someone with a growth mindset, when they make a mistake, they correct it, and they view that as something that's not detrimental to their learning. When somebody has a fixed mindset and they make a mistake, you'll all see those students in your classroom hiding over their work, covering it up. That shows that they have a fixed mindset. And when we look at effort is viewed under growth mindset as a positive thing. It ignites intelligence. The students want to grow. They want to do it again. However, with students who have a fixed mindset, if they have a setback, they decrease their effort. And the research shows that students with a fixed mindset often resort to cheating. Challenge. Students with a growth mindset, when they experience challenge, they will increase their effort when difficulties arise. And when a student with fixed mindset experiences a challenge, they really feel like they're being judged. They feel like there's that, and they really care about that, and it bothers them. So they feel like it's a smart versus a not smart situation. And the final one is with growth mindset. Students with growth mindset look for new opportunities. They seek those. But students with a fixed mindset reject opportunities. And so I think we need to keep, as educators, we often need to keep these in mind in many classrooms, because we always want to reward effort with the view in mind of developing an autonomous work ethic. But in many classrooms on assessments, correct answers are what is rewarded, and we have to be very careful and know our learner, because in growth mindset, effort needs to be viewed as an important step that gets recognition, not just the final answer. Students with an LD require more effort due to the learning difficulties, and educators can instill a growth mindset by helping students with an LD understand they're growing like the plant and learning because of the effort they're putting forth in developing their brain muscle. Oftentimes, students with a learning disability may take 20 minutes to finish a task, and we have to reward that 20 minutes. Jo Bowler is a math professor at Stanford University, and she expands on that point endlessly, that no matter how much the student effort puts in, it has to be rewarded, not just that final math answer. So we've talked about perseverance and provided some examples about inventors we explored today. Let's launch a poll now. Which statement best supports a student to develop a long-term growth mindset? So you have the multiple choice answers there. I'll let you read those. Okay, so we have our answers, and the answer was the second one, fill in the missing information one step at a time. So we have to be careful with praising students, false praise. We never want to praise them for being smart, and I'm going to go through that, and that's going to be the next information we're going to go through. But we have to, when we look at growth mindset and we make comments to students, how what we say influences their growth mindset and continues to have an impact long after we say it. I want you to think about this information again. We don't want to say, don't worry, everyone's not good in math, because it minimizes the problem that they're having. Breaking down the task, you can do this first, you can do that next, is why I picked B as the right answer. And you're smart, you can do this. You're going to discover that in the next slide, and we're going to talk about that in the next 5 minutes. And you always do a good job on this. You don't need my help. We don't want to minimize the difficulties that the student is having in the classroom. But great try at that. I'm going to return to the presentation now. So if you get anything out of today, I think this is probably one of the most important points that I'm going to make. In your professional practice, I want you to think about how you praise students. So consider this statement: wow, you're really smart. You got that answer correct, or you got that question right. What impact does that have on the student? So Carol Dweck found that praising intelligence put students on a fixed mindset who later, when they didn't do well, became really always led to failure and low self-esteem. Praise impact confidence in ability. How can we change the statement to a growth mindset? Wow, you really showed perseverance by doing the question a few times until you got it right. Okay. When we praise the final outcome and don't give credit to effort, it credits only the final outcome. We all have students with learning disabilities in our classes comparing themselves with others who complete things quickly, and this causes a fixed mindset. When we look back to melting chocolate bar, perseverance changed that melting chocolate bar into a microwave, and the hiccups into a popsicle cure. As educators, we want to give comments that praise effort and boost motivation to increase confidence. Effort-praised students are more confident on the whole, and they have excellent performance and continue to improve. It's something we want to strive for the beginning of the school year and continue throughout. So if I say, wow, you really persevered on that question, you tried it a few times until you got it correct. Or we're giving praise to the process, which I call process praise, and that fosters a growth mindset. We never want to tell a student they're smart, because the next time they don't do well in a test, they attribute it to not being smart. Okay? So the next point I want to talk about is using simple strategies to praise and encourage the love of challenge and making mistakes, to create some intrigue and enjoyment out of effort, and to keep learning past today. Carol Dweck promotes this relationship of sharing and learning, sharing the learning in the praise. And I think it's really important that we convey this message to parents as well. For me, this is the metacognition aspect of modeling for the student, so that they can do it independently later. So if we say, good job, it means sometimes that can mean to a student, you're smart. We want to lead the student to conclude something like this situation. So I'm going to do a little scenario for you. Teacher, how did you get that answer? Student, I tried it a few times. Teacher, what can you conclude? Student, I can do it with trying. Teacher, challenging yourself helped to get the answer. So using simple strategies that praise and encourage the love of challenge, making mistakes, creates intrigue and enjoyment of effort to keep learning past today. It's really key that we actually break down the task for the student so that they're aware that because they tried so hard, they did it a few times, they were able to get somewhere and they were able to learn. So in the end, what I'm trying to convey is that we need to praise the process and not the person. And I'm going to go over a few points in supporting students to have process praise rather than. So I just read that scenario to you. And now I'm going to go through supporting students with a growth mindset. Let's look at how praise should be given. Using statements like you wrote your key points on cue cards and reviewed them over and over, or used a strategy to remember content tests. I think that there's another strategy that you can use. Cueing the student is really helpful in breaking down the task and getting them to realize that there's a strategy that you can use to do better. If we're explicitly teaching students what they've done, like the action or the process, and the next steps in the future to be successful, we're encouraging students to have a growth mindset. And we're encouraging transference. There's a caution, though, that we have to be careful not to overpraise students for mediocre performance, because students with negative stereotyping or fixed mindsets can underperform and conveys the low expectation that ability matters more than effort. We really have to, it's kind of a fine dance between, overpraising and underpraising, and it's really about knowing the learner. So when we support students to have a growth mindset, praise should be given for, you can see it before you in the slide, engagement, perseverance, strategies, and improvement. And explicitly telling the student what they've done and what they need to do is key for that next effort. So I'm going to give you a few interventions now to change your mindset, to help students change mindset. There was a study by Stanford University, and they did two 45-minute online mindset tasks, and it raised students' achievement incredibly, just the two 45-minute online tasks. And I wanted to show you today the website that they used was called mindsetkit.org, and it's out of Stanford University. And they were, like I said, two 45-minute online lessons and practices. And if you are going to talk about this in a couple of minutes, the mindsetkit.org. That's one thing you can do to help change mindset, and you can do that in a computer lab in your school with your students. A second thing that was reviewed in this study by Walton and colleagues was to read an article on growth mindset with your students. And they found that the article, if it dealt with the brain's ability to grow and reorganize itself, that it was really impactful because students began to see that the brain is a muscle, it can change with learning, and that's not something that's fixed. A third thing that they found was that increasing awareness of the student's potential can be done through journaling. So as they're doing these online practices, looking at the growth mindset articles that you're reading with them, that if they journal some of their things that they're experiencing within the classroom, a test that they did or an assignment that they worked hard on, and they document that it really did change mindset, and it really helps students to be aware of their mindset. And the final thing that I found was they found that showing students videos, and I found one on YouTube by, it's just a 2-minute video called Growth Mindset Video, and it's by Bundle, and it's about Steve Jobs. And Steve Jobs, it talks about how much dedication he's given to his life work and how hard he's had to work, and it talks about his background. It's a really nice video that you could show to staff or students. I'm going to go now to a couple of screenshots of mindsetkit.org. And one of the things they have on there are some 3-minute videos that you can show your students or staff. And this is just one example of a screenshot. And it's just a 3-minute video, gives an example of what growth mindset is. And it's kind of cute because they fill in all this, the chart as you're going along and watching it. And a second one is what is growth mindset, or mindsets change, sorry. It's the next slide. And this one goes into a little more about brain development, neurons, etc. And it's a really good video available at mindsetkit.org. A third thing that's on this website that I would find very helpful and is a mindset survey. And there's just 3 questions there, and you can do a pre and post test with staff or students. And at the end of it, it gives you a little circle graph, and it just takes 10 minutes to conduct a class survey. And you can look at how you changed in your classroom after you do some of those online tasks. And something that I found just recently is last week, season 9 of Shark Tank, episode 1. I don't know if you saw this episode, but this would be a great thing to show your students to help change their mindset. It was an episode about fidget spinners and a middle-aged man with ADD who took a bike chain and some key rings and put them together and kept persisting until he made a product that benefited him because he struggled so much in his life through school, etc. And it gives the whole background. It's amazing. And then Barbara Corcoran says this in the episode. It's an excellent thing. It says, if I were to make a list of my top, say, 7 or 8 entrepreneurs I've invested in on Shark Tank, I would say all but one have a learning disability. And then after that, all the sharks started fighting over and exposing that I have a learning disability. No, I have a learning disability. And really was interesting to see that they were highlighting their learning disabilities, and that the most people have learning disabilities. And taking this into consideration, we can convince the students in a persuasive manner that they too are capable and can grow and learn. So it's a really great thing to show your students if you get a chance. Take a look at that. So I want to look quickly at a case study, hoping that there's aspects about this case study. You can read it while I'm talking here. It's just going to come up on the screen. I'm hoping there's some aspects of this case study that are familiar to some of and have little aspects of some of your students that you know and work with. One of the obstacles students with a learning disability like Sam on the slide that I'm going to show you is they don't want to read, and particularly when it's challenging and they dislike it. So we need to change that fixed mindset and change their thinking and ask them specific questions about the difficulty to get their input. So if I see this slide, it's coming up, is we're having a few technical difficulties, so it'll appear in a second. I just gave you a case study about a student who's in your class, and I'll just summarize it a bit for you, with a severe learning disability in reading. And they're having difficulty accessing materials. They're using assistive technology and programs modified, but they're able to access the curriculum. So there's the slide for you there. And Sam's able to complete the same novel study and reading materials. The point is, in showing you this case study, is we want to know what are some things that you can do to help support a growth mindset for students like Sam struggling to read. So when you look at this, we want to change their fixed mindset. You see the poor eye contact, the student looking down, and it's a subject that's very difficult for them. And it really depends on the student that you have in your class, how you're going to approach this. But, you know, I think it's really important to say, what is it that you like about reading rather than focusing on what you dislike? You certainly want to hear that voice and ask them. But a growth mindset approach is breaking down the obstacles around the difficulty and focusing on the strength. So if we can convince the student that they can bridge the gap and read at grade level, assistive technology, and getting that student input about their strengths, their interests, like if they like to read about sports or film, having a discussion is a real starting point for supporting a growth mindset for students who are struggling to read. This is a study that was done by Torgerson et al. In 2008 about evidence-based strategies to build self-esteem with students. And he found that we really need to support student autonomy and build their self-esteem to get them engaged in learning and set interesting content goals for reading and provide interesting materials like about their heroes in the movies. I'm sure you already know about these good things. All of these things combine to increase motivation and growth mindset framework. So if we have a comprehensive reading program around effective instruction and reading skills and strategies, it's the key. But student engagement and mindset is the final thing that really helps contribute to achievement. And research shows that growth mindset impacts academic achievement, and Sam needs to increase his confidence in his abilities to achieve and engage. So I'm just going to show you a quick couple of resources here. One of the things I found is, and I've taken a lot of my information from Carol Dweck's Growth Mindset, and this is an excellent book. Chapters 6 and 7 are my favorite because 7 and 8. Chapter 7 talks about where mindset comes from and focuses on growth mindset for teachers and parents. And chapter 8 is about changing mindsets. So those are really good. There's also in chapter 7 a lot of information for parents. And the bottom book in your left corner screen is the Growth Mindset Coach. And this is a fabulous book if you get a chance. I got it on Amazon, and it talks about every month of the school year. It has a little theme, and it gives activities that you can do each month to boost growth mindset in your classroom. And there's lots of questions and answers and journals and charts and fun activities to do. And it goes right from August right into July. And again, I said we would revisit mindsetkit.org, and this is sort of a screenshot of the website, and it has lots of little activities to do in there. Those are all the units at the bottom, and it's that you can use, and you just click on those, so it looks something like this. These are some of the units for supporting students in the classroom. So there's some of the units that you have in that website. And supporting students in the classroom is half the battle, but as teachers, we need to support the parents as well because they help their children to feel successful at home. And it's counterproductive to not have them helping at home because oftentimes parents are the ones that are telling their children they're so smart, they're so smart. We really need to, I think, educate them about growth mindset. So this website offers suggestions to help parents and educators with positive growth mindset. And my final thoughts, so I have a quote coming here for you. And my final thoughts are, when a teacher believes that ability can be changed or grown, he or she is also likely to view an individual student's ability in the same manner. So educators can promote and teach growth mindset with short activities throughout the school year. Messaging that rewards should focus on effort and perseverance rather than the final outcome. This is the key to long-term success. And research shows that students with a learning disability with a growth mindset have higher achievement. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll take a few questions now.
Thank you so much, Susan, for providing our participants with an opportunity to deepen their understanding on growth mindset. Throughout your presentation, I found it really very helpful. You've given some extremely practical suggestions and a wealth of information on readily available resources, so thank you. All right, let's move on to the Q&A part of today's webinar. If anyone has a question, please type your question into the chat box on your GoToWebinar dashboard, and I will read your question to Susan. Susan, we do have a couple of questions here.
Okay.
And And the first question I'm going to share is, at what age or grade level would you introduce conceptually growth mindset to students with LDs?
Oh, I would start in right away in junior kindergarten. Carol Dweck's research does focus more on the elementary and secondary high school. She's even doing a lot of research right now on university and often uses her own students as part of the project. But I think we need to, from the onset, look at rewarding the process and praising the process for students even in junior kindergarten, because they tend to get frustrated and can lose motivation, and we don't want to see that.
That's really interesting, because I'm not sure that educators would typically think of introducing something that could be considered somewhat esoteric to children as young as JK. And speaking about process, the next question is, when should you praise the student?
Well, it's really about knowing your learner. And I think when you're praising the student, you need to praise as the activity is breaking down. And I think you need to engage that student in the dialogue all the way along. What have you done? Where are you now? Okay, how do you feel about that? You really need to praise the student throughout in order to encourage them. And I think you'd really need to know your learner in this case. So I think praise for each step. If you've broken something down into steps, I think you need to praise each step of the process. And what Carol Dweck is saying is really stay away from that final praise at the very end of a task, because the student takes away from that, well, I got the final answer and that's all that was expected. I think that if we direct our praise to the beginning of a task, the middle of a task, and not so much at the end in terms of, well, you got the answer correct. It's more about, you tried really hard along this. What did you actually do? What did you learn from the process? And I think it's not even so much the praise, but engaging the student in that metacognition. Oh, how did you get this? Oh, and then student gives you their dialogue. Well, I tried this and then I tried that. And say, oh, what did you learn from that? So that's part of the praise. That's part of the praise. It's not just from the teacher. It's coming from the student's recognition and that metacognition.
Yeah, I really like that, Susan. It would help students right from a very early age to become reflective learners.
That's true.
Interesting. Okay, another question here. How important is it for students to be aware that they have a learning disability in order to support growth mindset?
I really believe in being honest with students about their learning disability. And early, I go around to several schools across the province, and even what we see at the Trillium Demonstration School is when students are aware of their reading level, they celebrate their success and their achievement along the way incrementally. So particularly when students are not, they're working on skills, and these are incremental skills. If they're not aware that they're improving slightly, they can develop a fixed mindset. So we really need to be very honest with them right away. And the students are part of that dialogue. What are you having difficulty with? Oh, show me. Okay. I think that they need to become partners in the learning process. And I think we really need to, I have several adults with learning disabilities say, I wish my parents had been honest with me early on, so I could actually figure out why I was having difficulty learning. And we see that we give a lot of workshops and use students as spokespersons, and I find that they have a lot higher confidence and a more growth mindset if they're aware of their strengths and needs. And that's exactly what Carol Dweck is saying as well.
That's a great answer. Thank you very much, Susan. I gave you praise. Okay, we have time for just one more question here before we will do our wrap up. And the question is on supporting staff and how school administrators could help a school culture, a staff move from fixed mindset to growth mindset?
Mm-hmm. Well, Carol Dweck and Joe Bowler from Stanford University say that it's going to be, we need to have everybody in society focusing on growth mindset, because we really have to change the fact that we don't want to say to students that they're, or people reward people, you're so smart, you're really intelligent, etc., because it is detrimental in the long run. So we really, with staff, I would encourage people to go on mindsetkit.org, because it has a lot of Carol Dweck's activities and information, and there is a section for educators, so it'd be really valuable. And I'd bring in some of those activities that I did today when the slides are posted, so you could actually look at famous inventions. What you want to do is with staff is show them one point of view of thinking and then changing it. How does that change? And also with this mindsetkit.org, there are little tiny videos that could be shown at staff meetings, and they're very short. Most of them are a maximum of 3 minutes. And there's some really good math ones in there. So if you are doing something at a staff meeting around math, it gives several different viewpoints of looking at a math question and tackling it from a growth mindset perspective of getting all the pieces maybe wrong, and then how you would come to a correct answer, and how you grow and develop from getting things incorrect as opposed to correct. And I know that's a hard concept in math, but that mindsetkit.org is where I would go.
Yeah, it seems to be an excellent starting point. Okay, well, thank you, Susan. That's all the time we have for today. So we're going to end our question and answer session at this time. If you submitted a question that wasn't read and responded to, or if you have any further questions, please either email us at info@ld@school.ca or use our hashtag on Twitter, and we will ensure your questions get answered. And finally, please mark the date for our next free webinar on November 15th. Chris Sands and Yvonne Bristow from the Toronto District School Board will be presenting on leading the implementation of neurodiverse practice in the classroom and school. On behalf of the LD at School team, I would once again like to thank Susan for her presentation, and thank you to all of our participants for joining us. Please remember that we will be sending out presentation slides and a short survey following today's webinar. The feedback we receive through our survey provides us with important information for producing future webinars. As a reminder, we will be sending out a link to this recorded webinar in approximately 3 weeks. Thank you again for participating, and enjoy the rest of your day.